Today is election day in Russia, but there's no suspense. 71-year-old Vladimir Putin will be named the winner, as he has been over the last 24 years. This time, as often, his challengers died, one after an explosion on a plane, and Alexei Navalny, Putin's leading rival, who died last month in an Arctic prison camp. Putin has killed nearly all internal opposition to his unprovoked war in Ukraine, and yet many courageous Russians continue the struggle outside the country. We met some of them in a city you might think of as the capital of free Russia.
The story will continue in a moment.
It's 500 miles west of Moscow, the city of Vilnius in Lithuania, where there's no love lost for Russia. Lithuania is a democracy of about 3 million people and a NATO ally. Vilnius, the capital, is clothed in the colors of Ukraine. The city changed the Russian embassy's address to Heroes of Ukraine Street, and Putin is reminded the International Court in The Hague is waiting with his arrest warrant. Since Putin's 2022 invasion, Lithuania has welcomed more than 2,500 Russian exiles.
It is our policy to provide shelter to all freedom fighters.
Mantas Adomaitis served as Lithuania's deputy foreign minister from 2020 until last August.
I haven't seen so many Ukrainian flags since I was in Kyiv. Why do your people feel so strongly about this?
Our freedom, our independence, our security is being defended in the battlefields in Ukraine. Ukrainians are dying so that we can be safe.
There are many more Russian dissidents who would like to come to Lithuania. Can you accept any more?
Yes, I think we can accept. Of course, we will accommodate as many as needed and to provide them with possibility to work for the freedom and democracy in Russia.
One of the Russian exiles in Lithuania working for freedom and democracy is a crusading mom. 2 years ago, Anastasia Shevchenko fled Putin's regime.
This is a terrorist regime. They are threatening other countries with oil, gas, nuclear weapon, and grain. They're threatening us with our children, with our parents, with our lives, and so on.
More than anything, it was her daughter, Alina, severely disabled at birth, that made Shevchenko an activist against Putin. Back then, the family was in southern Russia, and Alina was in a Russian government nursing home.
Alina could not speak, could not communicate?
No. She was like a 1-week child, like a baby. She was 17, but even, to feed her, it was a whole science because she needed blended food. You need to hold her in a special position.
Shevchenko cared for Alina much of the time because the Russian nursing facility was short on staff and supplies.
I was struggling to get medication for my daughter, begging in the pharmacy. She needed it. It was very important for her health. And they said, no, we just don't have it because the ministry forgot to order it this month and you need to wait. I decided I'm not going to keep silence. I'm going to stand out and to speak out.
She spoke out through a Russian democracy group called Open Russia. It was tolerated 10 years ago, and Shevchenko organized protests in her hometown. But in 2019, the Kremlin cracked down. Shevchenko was arrested, and her lawyer warned her she would be shocked by what the police had already done.
He showed me the screenshots of me in my bed, and I realized that they had installed the video camera into the air conditioning unit above my bed, and they have been watching me for 6 months in my bedroom.
A Russian court ordered Shevchenko into house arrest. She couldn't visit or care for Alina.
It wasn't long before her daughter developed pneumonia. By the time a judge granted Shevchenko a pass to the hospital, Alina was unconscious.
I spent maybe 10 minutes holding her hand, because that's what I do when my children are ill. When you hold their hand, they feel better. But this time, she was cold. She didn't feel me. And she died in an hour.
In 2021, Shevchenko was given a 4-year suspended sentence. But when Putin invaded Ukraine the next year, she decided to flee Russia. From her southern city, she took her 2 surviving children on an 1,100-mile drive. A U.S.-based democracy group arranged Lithuanian visas. What does this tell us about Russia today?
It's enough to write something on social media, just one sentence, and you can be imprisoned for years. They are listening to your phone calls, they are watching you in your bedroom, they are controlling you.
Breaking that control is why Sergei Davidis also left Russia for Lithuania in 2022. You would be in a Russian prison just for doing this interview.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
In Moscow, Davidis helped lead one of Russia's largest human rights groups, called Memorial. It won the Nobel Peace Prize 2 years ago, but now it's banned. He told us, almost every day, there are more and more arrests. We hear news about new political arrests. And apart from the legal side of it, more often than before, there's violence and torture. Davidis heads Memorial's project to support political prisoners. He told us he has confirmed 680 in prison today, but he believes the actual number is multiples of that. Since 2022, Russians can be sentenced to 15 years just for criticizing the war on the street or in the media. One of the consequences of the war, he says, was a complete wipeout of independent mass media, a prohibition of any opinion that's not under control of the government. Independent newsrooms in Russia have been forced to close. Government-controlled newscasts report only the absurd lie that the war is self-defense against Nazis. This host says, "We are on the side of good against the forces of absolute evil embodied by the Ukrainian Nazi battalions."
People are scared, so they feel lonely. They feel terribly lonely.
Tatiana Fagenhauer and Alexander Polushev were talk radio hosts on a prominent Moscow station. They were allowed to speak their minds until the day Putin launched his war.
It was my morning show. I said, it's 6:30. Good morning. War began.
War began, and within 2 weeks, their station was forced to close. Now, Polushev and Fagenhauer are in Vilnius, streaming daily into Russia on YouTube. Putin silenced Facebook, X, and Instagram, but YouTube may be too popular for the Kremlin to block so far.
This is the only chance to talk about the war honestly, because the propaganda tries to create this feeling that you are completely alone if you are against the war.
Why does this mean so much to you?
Really, I would hate myself if I am silent or pretending that everything is okay.
If Russian radio and TV stations are allowed only Kremlin talking points, we saw a Lithuanian station telling the truth, not on a channel, but on platform number 5 to a captive Russian audience. Because part of Russia, Kaliningrad on the left, is separate, like Alaska from the lower 48, the Moscow-Kaliningrad train must travel through Lithuania. The cars are sealed for the transit, but at a stop in Vilnius, Russian passengers were confronted by posters of atrocities. Each read, "Putin is killing civilians in Ukraine. Do you agree with this?" The gallery testified as the train waited half an hour. There's no way to know how much truth climbed aboard. And no one is allowed off the train, in part because Lithuania worries about Russian agents.
Putin is infamous for attempting to attack his enemies in foreign countries. And I wonder if the Russian dissidents are safe here in Lithuania.
Of course, it is a major concern for us. Then we spend considerable effort in making sure that dissidents are safe here and safer than they would be, in fact, in many other countries.
Have there been attempts?
Well, I'm afraid I can't release that information in more detail, but let's put it this way, that Russia is constantly probing and constantly trying.
And this past week, Russia may have gotten through. Leonid Volkov was attacked with a hammer outside Vilnius. Volkov, on the right, was a top aide to Putin's late rival, Alexei Navalny. Volkov's arm was broken. The attacker fled. Vladimir Putin's re-election this week will bring him to his 5th term, which will cover the next 6 years. He enjoys support from nationalists who want to believe that today's Russia is an exceptional nation. But Putin also has weaknesses. It's estimated he's lost 300,000 troops killed and wounded, and Russia has a population less than half that of the United States and an economy about the size of Italy's.
My hope is a country where government takes care about citizens.
Anastasia Shevchenko is free in Vilnius, but she's wanted in Russia for breaking her probation. These days, she's streaming her own YouTube show and sends medicine, food, and letters to political prisoners. She's become another voice to the isolated and the lonely and those like her daughter who will never escape the new Iron Curtain.
She was alone, no one next to her. I really feel very guilty about it. But I wouldn't change anything in my life, I think.
Why not?
You know, the society in Russia is based on fakes. We have fake democracy. By constitution, it is a democracy. Fake news, fake elections. And I want to be the opposite. I want to be open. I want Russia to be open.
How safe are Russian dissidents in Lithuania?
People asking me, come on, are you actually safe there?
At 60minutesovertime.com.